It's hella early for a show today, but hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce, joined by the Juice Man himself. It's the Juice and Luce show here on this hump day. Happy hump day to all those that observe. Juice, we're unfortunately talking about a loss today, but how are you doing, my friend?
I'm not going to let a brilliant pitching performance by a Seattle Mariner ruin how great the vibes are on the north side, my friend.
I like it. That is the way to take it. I am feeling the exact same way, my friend. So let's just dive right into it. Unfortunately, I think from a Cubs perspective, not a terrible amount to discuss from this game just because of the lack of offense and things like that. No Dansby Swanson in the lineup today. I think that was kind of expected. They noted it was just cramps. He had a long day, spending time at the hospital with Mallory, his wife, as she underwent surgery for a torn patella tendon. So just being a good husband to her, and he played double duty and still showed up, went 4 for 4, helped them get that win. So a well-deserved off day for Dansby today. So Magical popped in at second, Corner slid over to short. But really, I mean, the offense was quite dormant, just 5 total hits on the day. Bellinger was 2 of those. He hit a homer late in the game just to kind of make it a little bit exciting, I guess. But otherwise, the Mariners eventually teed off on the Cubs bullpen, but Marcus Stroman had himself a day. And Juice, I think that's where we need to start because this was a pitcher's duel. Don't be fooled by the 5-2 final. This was a starting pitcher's duel. You mentioned a brilliant pitching performance from Seattle's Logan Gilbert. He went 6 2/3 in this one. Just the 4 hits allowed, 1 earned run, 7 Ks for him. And how about Marcus Stroman on the other side? If this is a bad Marcus Stroman start, we're doing okay. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, just the 2 earned runs, only 2 walks, and 6 Ks again for the Stro show. So, Juice, I mean, talk to me about what was this pitcher's duel effectively today on the north side.
Yeah, it was fun. It almost really felt like you could tell what type of game this was without even knowing it was getaway day. You know what I mean? Like they absolutely played like both teams were headed out. They had an off day, the sandwich before it. Beautiful day at Wrigley. I'll say that if you were able to, head out to the ballpark, you were blessed. I'll say that you've been blessed the last couple of nights. I'm not terribly upset with the effort today. I think that when you're down a man like Dansby Swanson, especially when you're looking at a Suzuki List lineup, you really got a lot of guys and they've hit really well. I mean, I early threw shade at Bellinger and at Hosmer and some of these guys, but they've been pretty good. I wouldn't say that they're blowing the doors off of anybody, but they're playing the brand of baseball that I think that we expected them to play. It's going to be very hit or miss with the lineup, but they play good defense and they pitch. Marcus Stroman, though, man, like you said, and I think Boog even said the same thing. If this is a bad Marcus Stroman start, then, man, he's going to have a career year, an all-star year, one of those banner years that you don't really have to worry about that top of the rotation. And Justin Steele, too, behind him, who will pitch, when they go out to the West Coast here. He's that follow guy. He's pushing him, too. It starts that competition, that front of the rotation that we very much were kind of talking to Steele with. We asked that question, and he had, talked about how, there's a lot of competitive guys who are, on the ball club, and we're beginning to have that. I think, and I wasn't on last night's show, but I did get a chance to rewatch the game today. And, you could see it on Hayden Wisniewski's face as well, that there's a lot of competition going on within, that rotation, that they're trying to one-up each other, and they're very much trying to take the ball from the next and give the most, quality start as they can. And Marcus Stroman is the leader of that line, right? He's the guy who's setting the example for the rest. And you can't say enough about the start that he's had. It's been electric to see him at Wrigley too for his starts and be able to see his emotion come out. I think that in some ways that is a replacement for maybe the Wilson Contreras that they got. So his kind of starts end up being more or less, electric than the next because he brings that fire. But yeah, I think if you're not having buyer's remorse at all with Marcus Stroman over the course of the last 2 years. He was fantastic in the back half after he was healthy last year. And to begin the season, he is fantastic. The problem today, they ran into a buzzsaw on the other side as well, which some days you just got to tip the cap and say, a guy's going to be better than you that day, but you got another quality performance out of your starter. And then when it got handed over to the bullpen, I think the bullpen's just tired. They very much need this day off. To said it, JD said it during the broadcast as well. Like, it's so much needed that they need this because they've been very much taxed in the last, 2 nights in this series as well, and somewhat over the course of the homestand. But yeah, I think if you're a Cub fan, you got to just tip your cap and be happy that guys that you're paying the quality money for showed up. Marcus Stroman was able to, and Cody Bellinger, it didn't mean much, but I'll still very much take his day going into the West Coast trip as very much of a positive, because if he can get going, that trip looks less daunting. They're going to have those games in LA. Hopefully beat the hell out of the A's. And then when they come back, they're peaking, and they're coming off a West Coast trip on a run with a winning or at least splitting the road travel trip for the 2 series, and then going in against 2, top of the end NL West teams in the Padres and the Dodgers again at home. So hopefully those are just the points that they can continue to ride, continue to play Cub baseball, and they're going to find themselves winning their homestands more often than not if they play baseball like they have over the course of the last 6 games.
100%. And just in kind of addition to your rant there, Juice, Jake, like Jake said, Stroh put the team on his back today, worked out of some jams, wasn't going to settle for anything less than giving the team the innings they needed. And you mentioned that taxed, starting rotation. Smiley went 5 the other night. Wesneski only able to get through, 1 1/3 in that comeback win yesterday. They needed a quality 6 innings out of a guy like Stroman, and he went out and gave you that today. And yeah, he gave up 2 earned runs. But again, if 2 earned runs is a bad start for this guy, he's going to have the best season of his career without a single question. And he's been great so far. He's gone 6 innings in every single start so far. He has not given up more than the 5 hits he gave up today. It was 3 and 2 respectively in his first 2 starts. He hasn't walked more than 3 in an outing, just 2 walks today. And he's struck out at least 6 guys in each outing, with 8 being the most in that opening day start. So he's the definition of consistent right now. And I'll tell you what, Juice, I think especially in today's world of baseball, where, you get the elite pitchers, but they're so few and far between. I will take an ace on my team if my ace is consistent. And that's what Marcus Stroman's been. If I know that you're going out on the bump every 5th day and you're going 6 at minimum, and you're walking less than 3 or less every day, and you're probably K'ing at least 5 every single time out, and you're keeping the earned runs to a minimum, that definition of consistency for me is ace level worthiness, really, from a guy like Marcus Stroman. And that obviously living up to the $25 million price tag, has a player option for $21 million next year. I think he declines it. Doesn't mean I don't think he's a Cub next year. I think there's still a possibility of that, but I think he's going to be looking for a pay raise, especially if he continues on the path that he's on. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, Belly, still a good day for Bellinger overall. His, final box score line, 3 official at-bats today. 2 hits, obviously, both of those resulting in RBIs, one of those being the home run, and just 1 strikeout for Belly today. So not really a bad day at all entering the West Coast trip. And Juice, we discussed pitching. Pitching was great. You mentioned Gilbert, right? A guy that's on the rise for this Mariners team. Had a great day today. You tipped the cap where it was. But I think a lot of Cubs fans were also kind of distracted today, if we're being entirely honest, and for good reason, because, obviously the comeback win yesterday was a load of fun. And I think a lot of people were still riding that high from that comeback victory. I think that Nelly V Grand Slam is just burning over in my brain. But the Cubs did it. Like, we sat here all offseason and said, is this team ever going to extend the homegrown talent they have on the roster? And we got 1/2 of the pair extended before the season, that being Nico Horner and his 3-year extension that he got. And now Ian Happ gets his 3-year extension that'll kick in 2024. It's going to pay just a hair over $20 million a year on average. It's a $61 total million contract for Ian Happ in these 3 years. Juice, I've got to tip both sides here, really, on both of these deals. I have to tip the players for getting what is truly, I think, good value for them, while still allowing yourself to tip the cap to the front office and saying, good job on you to make and find a contract that is beneficial to both parties here, because neither one of these extensions handicap or handcuff the Cubs in any capacity. Unless you make the argument that Happ has the no trade clause and you can't move him for 3 years, whoop-dee-dee. And then on top of that, they can still add around these guys too. So it feels like the perfect compliment, really, from both parties, getting a deal done that I think every fan is going to sit back and go, wow, that worked out really well for both sides here.
Yeah, I think, too, you got to tip the cap to the players who got the deals, too. Like Nico Horner and Ian Happ are going to hit free agency at respectively 31 and 29. I mean, so you're looking at maybe another pay raise and another long-term contract that they'll be able to cash in on. The Cubs, in a lot of ways, are probably going to get, most of the prime from those two guys. You're not going to be paying deep into when they're 35, 36, and you're struggling to find a place for them in your lineup. You're very much paying for, short, very team-friendly deals that I think are pretty fair. And two, Ian Happ, if he would have foregone all of this and went to free agency, he's probably the best hitter that's on the market. And who's to say that a team that is contending a World Series, just needs one more bat in the outfield or a DH, doesn't give him way more money just in the hopes that of 1 year of high money for Ian Happ results in a World Series. I think it truly is a testament too, as well as to how much that they believe in the front office and the players that these guys are bringing in. We look around this minor league system and we see guys like Christopher Morel who are tearing up AAA. We see Seiya Suzuki who has, superstar, possibility. There's guys like Matt Mervis too doing the same thing down there. And I got a chance to watch Kevin Alcantara last night, and I'll save those thoughts for the end of the show, but that kid too is going to be a star. I think it's just an overall feather in the cap all around to the organization and all the work they've done scouting and the research development team of getting quality guys within the locker room. There's been nothing but sunshines and rainbows coming out via the reporters talking about how much Dansby Swanson in such a short time means to them. Yeah. So there's just not a lot of controversy that's, riddled around this ball club, and it's riddled with likable guys that like to play with each other, love to put the pinstripes on and run out to left. Ian Happ, we've been out there out in left field how many times, man, and he plays it up with the bleachers. It was going to be somewhat of a mutiny, I think, if they were, had to let him go. And I think sometimes the best things that you do for your franchise are the things that you don't do. And they clearly had plenty of offers for Ian Happ last year. They were out there. They 100% declined because they thought they weren't getting the value back. And now they looked at it as, man, we think we can compete. We feel like we're an at-bat or maybe a top of the rotation piece away from winning this division. And you've seen the Cardinals struggle out of the gate. This division can be there for the taking. And it's just such a relieving thing for all the prospects that are within the system right now. When you see a homegrown guy like Nico Horner and Ian Happ get paid, you think, man, if I make myself really comfortable here, I know for a fact that this front office is going to reward me because they did for these guys. And they're kind of resetting the fact of they've lost so much credibility with some fans and the media as well, because that's what was pushed when guys like Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo and Javi Baez and Wilson Contreras were, run out of town. But I think the picture is being painted in a different light now, because I think that now the fans that were on the side of, man, I hate the Ricketts family, biblical losses sell the team. Now you're starting to see the plan emerge of, we have this homegrown talent. We're starting to pay our core guys. And now I think that we're getting to a point where most Cub fans are saying, now let's add. Let's find these guys via free agency, via trades, to add to this team, to add to this young core. And it is young. And let's go for the next run and the next great Cubs team that Jed Hoyer had talked about all offseason and the offseason before that. And those were the reasons why you had to make the moves. But awesome for Ian. He's going to hit the market at a time where he could probably still cash in. Same with Nico Horner. And it's a matter of fact for both those guys that they're going to be loved for the next 3 years that they're here.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you mentioned the length and the duration of these extensions as well. It coincides with what they did bringing in Marcus Stroman, right? You bring him in on a 3-year deal with, it's effectively 2-year with a player option, and it gives the player an opportunity to make more money. Now, that is absolutely an option for them to return to the Cubs. It's not saying like, oh, they're gone after this contract. No. They can come back for another contract, but it's giving them the opportunity, especially if things don't go right, right? If the Cubs are, and not in a position to win, they can leave and go, win a championship somewhere. Or if the Cubs are in a position where you magically hit on 50, 60% of these prospects that they have, then you're not strapped into a guy who's going to be aging. You can bring in some of these other guys that are homegrown talent and continue that, mold that, again, like we talked about. When you see a team like the Rays, who's 11-0 right now, because of how they win baseball games, and you put money behind it, you become the Dodgers. And that's what the Cubs are starting to do now. And I think it's just refreshing because, to your point, just right, the plan's coming into play, but it's nice seeing homegrown talent be a part of that plan. It's nice seeing Nico Horner be, just visually considered a franchise pillar. It's nice seeing Ian Happ in the same manner, at least again for the next 4 years. Maybe it's not forever, but at least it's for this next run, which is probably in this next 4-year window, when we do start to see guys like PCA and we do start to see some of these pitchers come up. And, there are going to be impact players available via free agency in the near future. Shohei Ohtani, obviously the biggest name probably of all of them. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens coming into the future. And it's a resounding echo that everybody loves the Hap extension. And I'm right there with you, as our friend Kevin from the Dingers Show tells us right there. But I'm telling you, man, it's a good time because, like you also brought up, right, today in the minor leagues, AAA Iowa, Seiya Suzuki goes deep. That looks really good. And a big credit, I believe it was Mitch that probably tweeted it from the Dingers podcast. He said, "See you later, Iowa," and it was "Say you later, Iowa," because Seiya Suzuki looks ready to return to the bigs. He looks healthy. He looks ready to go. And it's going to be great getting him back on this West Coast trip. As what's been the report so far is, as long as he progressed well and there were no setbacks, they expected him to join here in this upcoming road swing. And you got guys, like you said, like Nelson Velasquez coming up and making an impact, who started out hot at AAA Iowa. Morel's doing the same thing. Mervis is doing the same thing. So you got the guys that are close to the show doing well. You got the guys further away from the show who are generating buzz, like the PCAs and the Kevin Alcantara's of the world. They finally have that like balance, it feels like, in the farm. It's not just all these guys that are, pushed so many years away. Oh, wait. No, there's that first now. To your favorite analogy, Juice, right? We joked last year it's the hors d'oeuvres, it's the finger food at the beginning of the course meal. Now we're starting to get the real appetizers. Like, they're coming. It's happening now, right? This is still early. This is still early in this timeline that I think Jed and Carter and Kantrovitz kind of put together in the front office. But man, oh man, it's starting to get exciting, dude. And we're gonna probably see Seiya Suzuki back here soon, and just see what he does and how his entrance into the lineup arguably changes the dynamic of what this offense can do.
Yeah, they're poised and ready to go, and I'm curious to see they go on this West Coast trip. Let's say they take 2 out of 3 out of the Dodgers, and then they go and sweep, and they come back off of that trip 5-1. There's going to be some more buzz within this town because they're sitting right now, as a middling, 500-ish team.
Right.
You start to stack some wins that you don't think that you can get, and then you start to play these big teams at home like LA and San Diego, and you start to get that media coverage of like, how real are the Cubs? And then you start to kind of push that timeline, and you start to wonder, who's available at the deadline, who could be added in this lineup that could help. And it becomes a really exciting time. And I think just overall, I tweeted it out earlier today. It's a really good time to be a Cubs fan because there is a big league ball club where I think the narrative has moved from development to let's push the envelope and try to contend.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a stacked minor league system with a lot of buzz. I mean, I'll tell you right now, we were at last night's South Bend Cubs game, and it was a beautiful day. Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of reasons to go out to the ballpark. But there was just a different kind of feeling when you watched guys like Kevin Alcantara out there. Mm-hmm. And you saw the things that he could do. And you're like, man, you're really watching a big league player right now, a guy that could really project. And then you get the news about Ian Happ being, extended. And then you get the news that both Morel and Seiya Suzuki went yard today. There's a lot of embarrassment of riches right now that's going on for the Cubs. And we've lived through a lot of hell. I mean, don't get me wrong, Ron. We were on these same, Cubs on taps going, man, like I really did. And we used to talk about it pre-show, man. I really don't want to talk about the big league team right now. There's no reason to. There was Christopher Morel and God knows who else that was going on in there. And now when's this guy getting back? That Cub magic is almost like it's in the pre-excitement mode. You're feeling like you're opening up a new gift, and you're starting to find out, what these guys are like. You're learning about Dansby Swanson and like what he's and you're going along for the ride. It feels a lot, and I don't want to like tip the way I feel right now, but I'm getting there. As I watch more and more Cub baseball, even after a loss today, I got that like 2015 feel, right? Like they were pitching, they were doing things right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it didn't work out, but they didn't beat themselves, and they were going to get beat by a stellar performance, if anything. And the Cubs are doing that. And last night had all that magical feeling. And I'll tell you what, I can start to feel that Cubby magic. It's coming, baby. It's coming. And we've been patient enough for it.
Absolutely. I think patience is a good way to put it. And, yeah, man, it just, Tyler and I talked about it on last night's show that this team is becoming so easy to fall in love with because of the weird, kind of intricacies of the roster and the personalities that are a part of it. It's really easy to see why this team could have that Cubs magic and bring something here in the future. Juice, a bummer of a loss today. Still a series victory, though, for the Cubs. Now they've stacked back-to-back series wins, which we love to see. They are above 500, 6-5, heading into this West Coast swing. So, Juice, before we look ahead to the beginning of said West Coast swing, do you have any final thoughts on today's game?
No, just flip the page, get some rest, especially Dansby Swanson. That's such to be thrown into the having to go with your wife to surgery and her dreams of the United States soccer being crushed, right? I mean, you're eventually, you just have to be a shoulder to cry on, somebody to go through that with, a partner in life. Mm-hmm. And then to go and then play the game. Like I was not surprised that he cramped yesterday. I wasn't, and when you saw that happen and you're like, oh, I hope it's not anything serious, but then you start to take the step back and you hear it's cramps and you go, makes sense. But that's a leader. That's a guy that I would guarantee went into David Ross's office, was like, I can play today. And David's like, hey, let's pump the brakes. Like, take a day off. I understand we'll give you the back-to-back. We'll go out. You'll be back in the lineup, come Friday. And
Mhm.
and I'm sure that, he wanted so badly to be that leader that's out there again. And I'll tell you what, man, my final thoughts, the Cubs should have no regrets on that contract, because
Mm.
what he does in the field and as a leader, everything else with the bat becomes like whipped cream and a cherry on top of the sundae, because he very much does all the little things that a leader does. And for so long, the Cubs, I felt like, maybe didn't have that. After Rizzo left and some of that last year, you start to wonder, like, who is leading that dugout? Wilson Contreras was always that was him, but Wilson Contreras he's not everybody's cup of tea.
Mhm.
Dansby Swanson seems like he is everybody's guy. And that is
Yeah.
something that I think the Cubs could very much rally around. And they should never worry about having to pay that man, every bi-weekly, I think we researched one time when they were, how do major league players get paid? They get paid bi-weekly. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly well put. He was at the hospital 4 a.m. with Mallory for her surgery. As you noted, just it's every soccer player's dream to play for your country, right? And to her to have to go through this injury and what the rehab process is going to look like, and just being there for her, and then spending the whole day in the hospital with her, to come turn around, play a baseball game, and go 4 for 4 before you cramp and have to be taken out. A leader, just an incredible person and player. Really, I think, we talk about Ernie Banks and being Mr. Cub, and Rizzo was the kind of the reincarnation of that 2.0. I'm not going to call him Mr. Cub 3.0, but I am going to call him the heartbeat of this Cubs engine, right? He is the guy. And I think you saw it today on the field a little bit too, just how different this team is in terms of their confidence, in terms of their alertness, in terms of their kind of, we joke it on tap, right? TWTW, the will to win, right? Swanson injects that into this Cubs roster. And I think that's a great way to sum up today's game, Juices. You can see Swanson's value even when he's not on the field, because of just really how different today's game felt in a lot of those aspects as well, without him out there manning shortstop. So, a loss is a loss. Like you said, man, clean slate, turn the page, and get back at it this coming Friday, because Juice, they will start a 3-game set at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, California, with the LA Dodgers. This is a 9:10 Central Daylight Time start, so 10:10 for you, buddy, over in the Eastern Time Zone on Friday, April 14th. Yeah, the 6-5 Cubs against a middling right now Dodgers team, 6-6 as of today. That will be our friend of the program, Mr. Justin Steele, on the bump for the Cubbies, 1-0 on the season with a .75 ERA and 11 Ks. It is still to be determined of who will be the pitcher for the Dodgers, at least according to MLB.com. So we will certainly keep an eye on that as Friday approaches. Dodgers. If you're out in LA and you're a Cubs fan, you can watch this on Sportsnet LA or listen on Dodgers radio. And then obviously the usual suspects in Chicago, Marquee Sports Network and 670 The Score. A handful of these Dodgers have seen Steele. Nobody really has any wild success against him outside of maybe a rare single or here and there. So Juice, as things stand, what are you expecting? What do they need to do, not only Friday, but in this upcoming Dodgers series? And then we're going to have to get some Fly the W picks, too, for the new series before we wrap things up and we get out of here.
I think just play your baseball, right? Pitch, timely hitting. Today was interesting. I really thought that the start, when they came out and scored early, that this was going to be, Cub baseball. Get them on, get them over, get them in. And they were going to kind of ride Stroh, but then eventually Gilbert settled in and they were unable to do that. I will say this. I loved what I saw out of Cody Bellinger today, and I hope he plays this next series with that chip on the shoulder. The chip of the shoulder of, you let me go, and I'm here now, and I'm going to show you that I can play. And I'm going to show – he should be comfortable. It should be a place of comfort for him. He should go into that series and be able to be successful. He is my circle the player in terms of success for this trip. If he plays well, I think everything will fall into place. I think we're going to say this a lot over the course of the year. But for this series, I want the Cubs to play as everybody's doubting them and as this is their coming out party. I want them to go in there to the Dodgers and play good baseball and show the MLB that the Cubs are for real. You know, there's a lot of guys who are looking at the Cubs as a very average baseball team, some below average. Announce it to the league. Announce it to your fans that, hey, there's more to be excited about. Get good pitching out of Justin Steele. I think that could 100% happen. I look at, Jameson Taillon. I hope he has a bounce back start over the course of, this third start that he's getting here. And just keep building on it. If you're Drew Smiley, you had a good start, last two nights ago. Make sure you're going out there and build on that and try to win 3 straight ball games, win series. That's all you have to do if you're the Cubs. 2 out of 3. And when you look up in September, if you keep winning 2 out of 3 and take the occasional sweep, you'll find yourself in the playoffs. And for the Cubs to do that, they got to pitch, they got to play defense, and they got to have timely hitting. And that's a park that you can absolutely do those things. Announce it to the whole baseball world that you're for real. And don't be afraid of the Dodgers. We talked about their offseason. They let a lot of players leave and go out the door who were plus wins above replacement guys. So kick their butt and, leave them under 500. I think that'd be awesome. If you're Cub fan, 2 out of 3 is something to look forward to. But again, they're going to have to pitch and they're going to have to play defense and have some timely hitting. But yeah, I 100% circle Cody Bellinger as my player to watch for this series because I want him to play like a man possessed. And I think he could very much do that, going back into an environment he's very comfortable in.
So he is your fly the W then pick, Juice?
I think I'm going to take him. After a 2 for 3 day, I'll take Cody Bellinger.
I like it. I'm right there with you, man. I think this is a big series for the Cubs. I think this is a big trip for the Cubs. I think they can really set the course for what the rest of the month looks like, but also maybe the rest of the season looks like. Just continuing to get into what their brand of baseball is. Like you said, pitch well, play good defense, and find that timely hitting when the time comes and you need it. They almost had it today. The umpire might have gypped them out of that by Miles Mastrobuoni having to stay in the box, even though it was clearly a walk. And who knows what could have happened, but it is what it is. I like the belly pick. I'm gonna go with the heartbeat though. I think it's gonna be Swanson. If this lineup feels different when he's in it. I don't know if Seiya's gonna be back on Friday, so just that alone, I'm going to avoid taking him as a fly the W pick. But we might be looking at him for that Oakland series. So I'm going to go ahead though, and I'm going to take Dansby Swanson as my fly the W pick for this coming series against the Dodgers. Juice, before we wrap up, your final thoughts, my friend. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I want to talk about how awesome the South Bend game was last night. They do such a great job. If you're in the area, head down there. They do fireworks. I got to go on the field and watch the fireworks, which was cool.
Nice.
Got to get a buffet with some mac and cheese and some chips and some hot dogs. It was all you could eat. Had some beers on the Performance Center patio. Yeah, see the hot dogs are still there. They're coming up. Coming back to get you. Still coming back to get me. I will be there tonight as well, but I just want to talk about Kevin Alcantara for a second. He didn't have the best game, but when you walk into that park and you see him in center field, he just looks like a man amongst boys. The way he moves, and he threw out. I've seen some throws in my day, going to Cubs games, being out. Kevin Alcantara maybe had the best throw I've ever seen, ever to cut down a man at third. I mean, I'm telling like warning track, Bo Jackson to the plate type of arm strength. Like it was a seed. And that kid's arm is going to play in any position that they put him out there. And he's fast as hell, man. He ran out a pop fly from second base after an injury scare, mind you, that he got hit in the leg. And I swear to you, man, like that speed plays. If he can cut down the loopiness of his swing and the strikeouts and put the ball in play more often, that kid's going to be a star. And I'm intrigued to watch him while his time here in South Bend is a thing, but I feel like it's going to be pretty short-lived because I feel like once he puts it all together, he's a candidate to rise through the organization pretty quick because he already does 3 parts of the game, in my opinion, very well. He's a good defender, he's quick, and he has that arm. And he has the power to go with it. So if he's able to, put that all together, I think we see a meteoric rise through South Bend to, Tennessee and eventually to Iowa, where then he's probably quickly knocking on the door for a call up with the Cubs. So not saying that's all going to happen this year, but after watching him, he's the real deal. He's got a lot of things going for him in this game.
100%. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason, right, that he is considered the number 2 prospect in their system, a top 100 player in all of baseball. So certainly a guy that I think you're not only going to keep an eye on, but we as a collective group here at Cubs on Tap are also going to keep an eye on. Just my final thought actually comes from a response in our Twitter posts here today. It comes from one Randy Ball at RRBall152 on Twitter. Said during the Ross regime, the Cubs don't seem to have the killer instinct. They rarely sweep a series. I'm not sure if they let down in game 3 of the series or what happens. I've seen so many series where they won the first 2 games, but not the third. And I think it's a fair point because I think we did see a lot of that in 2021. I think we saw a lot of that in 2022 when they did win series. But I think it's because they were lacking the players that possessed some of that killer instinct. And perhaps the biggest one, in my opinion, on the roster was not in the lineup today. And you saw it without Dansby Swanson in the lineup. So I think this is a series, Juice, to your point earlier, where maybe they can enact some of that killer instinct. If you do get, 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers and you find yourself quickly up maybe 2-0 on the A's, put the throat down and get them. I know it's getaway day. I know you're coming back to see the Dodgers again. Put them away. Get that sweep. Get that 3rd win in a row. Bring that momentum with you then to Wrigley Field as you welcome in 2 of the juggernauts in the NL West, in the Dodgers and the Padres then, for 7 games over the course of 8 days before a trip out to Miami to end the month. So I think it's a fair point that Randy brings up, and I'm glad you shared that with us, sir. But yeah, let's see some of that killer instinct. And I think we're going to see more of it. I think guys like Dansby Swanson and some of these guys that have won championships and know what it's like to win at the major league level are going to start to enact a little more of that because there is that talent now on the big league roster that we didn't have for the last year and a half once the sell-off occurred in 2021. And you could maybe make the argument that because of some of that youth and that, lack of further development at the major league level of the past core, that maybe they didn't even really have that killer instinct either. And maybe that's something that this next starts here brand of baseball that is the Cubs right now can enact. So from top to bottom, from South Bend all the way to the major league level, man, we got stuff to be excited about and to look forward to here all season long at Cubs on Tap. But before we get out of here, I do want to remind everybody we are one of 2 official podcasts of the On Tap Sports Network that cover the Chicago Cubs. Check out our friends over at the Dingers Podcast. They're at Dinger Cubs on Twitter and Instagram. Be sure to follow the whole gang, Kevin, Jake, Mitch, and Jeff. You can follow us at Cubbies on Tap, also on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Luce on Tap. Juice is at Juice on Tap, as Joey Ricotta would say. Luce on Tap, Juice on Tap, Luce on Tap, Juice on Tap. Crack them, lock them, and you know the rest. But go follow him at Joey Knows Nothing, at Teddy Freddy 270, at Nick_on Tap. And be sure to follow all of our other great things. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks. Bulls got a big play-in game tonight. Be sure to tune in with Bulls on Tap after that one. It's a big one. It could really change the course of what the Bulls look like over the next 2 to 3 years. You've got the Blackhawks still in contention for the number 1 overall pick. The Four Feathers clan will be in attendance at that game tomorrow night to close out the season at the United Center. And then on top of it, Juice, you and I will be on the mic here in about 30 minutes.
10 minutes.
Talking. Yeah, maybe 10 minutes. Talking about the Chicago Bears over at Bears on Tap. So be sure to follow along there, and also check out our friends at Bear Nation Pod, our second Chicago Bears podcast that is now a part of the network. And they lost today, friends, and we all got friends that like the Southsiders. If they need somebody to cry with, send them over to our friends over at Sox on Tap, because even though they're not playing good baseball right now, they still do a great job covering the Southsiders. And let's be honest, we all have friends that like the other guys on the side of town, and we like our friends that are fans of the other guys on the side of town. So you send your friends to our friends, and they'll have a good time together, wallowing and crying about Grafal ball and whatever the hell else is going on in White Sox land. Once again, ontapsportsnet.com, at ontapsports on social media, the OnTap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Juice, it's always a pleasure, my friend. The Juice and Luce show was back today. We will be off. You will hear from us again probably Friday night. I am, if I'm a betting man, that'll be a Cubs on Tap after dark with myself and Joey, which God knows where that show will go.
Or me and you after a round of golf and some drink. Who knows?
Perhaps. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to see who's who on that show, but we will have a show late on Friday night, and then we'll be back with you on Sunday at the conclusion of that Dodgers series before we get into the following week against the Oakland Athletics. Juice, like I said, buddy, always a pleasure. And what do you say, buddy? We lock it down. Do you know how? That Cubs on Tap.
Fuck the Cardinals.
And let's go, Cubbies.